Look, what do you have to lose? You're living in poverty. Your schools are no good. You have no jobs. 58% of your youth is unemployed. What the hell do you have to lose? And at the end of 4 years, I guarantee you that I will get over 95% of the African-American vote. I promise you.
Donald Trump at least pretended to court black voters when he was running for president in 2016. But a new book by the Wall Street Journal's Michael Bender reveals the cynical nature of Donald Trump's outreach to black voters. I've done all this stuff for the blacks. He said, the blacks. That's a quote. It's always Jared telling me to do this, Trump said to one confidant on Father's Day. And they all effing hate me, and none of them are going to vote for me. And they didn't vote for him in 2016 or in 2020. But that might have something to do with the fact that Republicans are always trying to suppress Black and Latinx votes, including in places like Texas, where last month Democrats walked off the House floor to block passage of the voter suppression bill. Former Congressman Beto O'Rourke is the founder of Powered by People, a major grassroots organization in Texas mobilizing Democratic voters. They're holding a voting rights rally in Austin this Sunday at the steps of the Texas Capitol, and he joins me now. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
Hey, Zerlina, it's great to be with you, and thank you for mentioning that democracy and voting rights rally at the Texas Capitol this Sunday at 5:30. This is a great opportunity for Texans to stand up and be counted and try to stop that voter suppression that you were just telling your viewers about that is raging across this country, and nowhere more so than in Texas, where you have the worst levels of voter suppression in the country. You have 750 polling place closures, for example, over the last 8 years, a voter ID law that particularly targets minorities in this state, and a gerrymander of our state. It was described as a racial gerrymander by a 3-judge federal panel. On top of that, they want to end souls to the polls, or Sunday morning voting. They want to make those with disabilities disclose their personal private medical information in order to vote early. And then most alarmingly, Texas wants to reserve the right to overturn future elections simply based on the allegation of fraud. So this is ground zero in this fight. And that's why we want so many folks to come out and join us and make sure that our state lawmakers and then those Senate Democrats in the U.S. Capitol hear us loud and clear and pass voting rights legislation like the For the People Act. It could not be more important. And this is a state that understands that best.
You know, Texas was already one of the hardest places to cast a ballot. And you just laid out there so many aspects of this new piece of legislation that will make it even more difficult. In terms of the organizing you're doing on the ground, what do you hope to gain out of the protest on Sunday? And what message are you trying to send to those in power about blocking access to a new demographic of folks?
Yeah, that pressure that people can bring to bear is really powerful. We've already seen, Zerlina, some of the state Republican lawmakers who voted for SB 7, that was the elections or voter suppression bill in the regular session, disavow provisions of it. They've said they didn't mean to cancel Sunday morning voting, and they didn't know that what they voted for would have allowed them to overturn elections. And I don't think it's because they suddenly got religion on this issue. I think it's because they're hearing from their constituents, Republicans and Democrats alike, who are outraged that they would be stopped from voting through this, as Jim Hightower calls it, a theft of our elections. So if we show up in numbers large enough, not only can we stop the next attempt to do this in a special session in Texas, but I hope that we can give President Biden and those Senate Democrats some encouragement to get the job done on For the People Act, because much as Lyndon Baines Johnson in 1965 needed to be able to pass the Voting Rights Act of that year to create a true multiracial democracy in America, and did so in large part because he was pressured to do so by civil rights and voting rights leaders across the country. In fact, began his speech to Congress that year by referencing John Lewis's march across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. We need to get out there in person and in public, and no more tweeting and Facebook and calling folks. We got to show up and demonstrate. And I think that's what moves things in this country. At least that's what it's done. That's what's done the job historically. So, yeah, I think it can work, Zerlina. And The alternative is to sit at home in despair, and that won't lead to anything good.
Generally, organizers aren't very cynical. They're optimists, and they're like, okay, we're going to get to work. That's how they roll. Texas is one of the states in America that has seen very dramatic demographic shifts, and those are related to the voter suppression bills. They're directly linked because America will be a minority white electorate by 2045, according to Pew Research. Do you think this new wave of voter suppression bills is essentially Republicans admitting that these demographic shifts are not in their favor, and so they want to block the ballot box for those who are less likely to vote for Republicans?
You hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what's happening in Texas. So I mentioned the racial gerrymander of our state. What that means is that there's a good chance if you're black or brown in Texas, you've been moved out of a given congressional district to diminish the impact or power of your vote, or the likelihood that you would vote at all. And so much of SB 7, the elections bill that was debated recently in Texas, is targeted at Harris County, Houston, Texas, which, Zerlina, is the most diverse city in the United States of America. It is those voters that they're trying to stop from casting that ballot and having their voices heard. And so we've got to overcome that. And we've got to overcome that by stopping these bills, by pushing voting rights legislation. And then in Texas, there are 2 million eligible but unregistered voters. So I'm asking my fellow Texans to get certified as volunteer deputy registrars, or VDRs, which allows you to register eligible voters in your county. If we bring those 2 million onto the rolls, then even if the system remains rigged and the deck's stacked, we'll still, by the numbers, have a chance to win elections. So that's our insurance policy. But first step is stop the suppression and pass voting rights legislation like the For the People Act before the U.S. Senate right now.